Your entire screen. Okay. Present to everyone. Yeah, good. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah. Actually, you know what? I have a copy. I mean, not for you.
Take home.
Yeah, just so that's my office and that's my business partner's office, and he's not gonna be here tonight. So
this is from
yes, from his desk. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let's see, I wanted to talk about that. We can close all these other ones. That one's fine. That one's fine. Okay. Don't need that anymore. Don't need that anymore. Okay, cool. And then let me just get rid of some of these other things. Okay, that's fine actually. Don't need that. 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 All right, that's okay.
What are some of the bigger groups that we see here?
Like in the area of downtown or in the area of San Diego County? San Diego County, the JavaScript is probably the biggest. And then there's a main JavaScript meetup, and there's like, little small factions here and there. Let's see what else. There's a Java user group, which I haven't been to in a while. There's an Agile user group. There's a .NET user group, which we are loosely associated with. There's a Python. I go to that one fairly often. Let's see what else. There's an AWS one called Lambda Sharp, which is pretty cool. It's like right down the road. Yeah. How long are you in town for?
Until Saturday. Week of vacation. Let me work a week remotely while I was here. I have family.
Oh, okay.
Visiting my brothers. I keep trying to find jobs in San Diego.
What's your specialty or area of focus or whatever? Like.
Right now, I'm doing the easiest route to staying employed, or at least if I can get dropped off in one contract.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm from Austin, so we have a size group of rack spaces out there, and they're really nice. They host a lot of the meetups there, and so when you got a meetup that stays in a fixed place for a good period of time, you start getting bigger and bigger crowds. So I've seen as many as 150 people show up. The reason I was asking is like Home Depot once had an office out there, and they had Kelsey Hightower and Kubernetes come out and do some presentations.
Cool. I'm gonna grab some pizza while we wait for some more people to roll in.
You guys have a good chunk.
Yeah, the Intuit office is a lot of the bigger spots.
Hi.
Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Pretty good.
Where do you want to get your copy? I remember this room.
Did Ben, did Shashank go down?
Yeah.
He didn't go down to check on if somebody else is down there?
He didn't mention that. I can go down and check if you want.
Yeah. Grab some food and then, if you don't mind, head down there. I have a feeling there may be some people stuck down there.
Barb was friendly, but he almost sent me to a meeting. I didn't know which one. I don't know what else is going on. He's like, you need to go up to the 19th floor. I said, no, I don't.
Uh-oh. I hope that's not happening to other folks. No, this is, I just wanted to mention, a couple of us saw this Kubernetes talk, and he covered in an hour what this book covers, you know, and it's a pretty good summary / different way of looking at it. All right, so let me
East Coast, yeah.
So Scott, I was finally able to use Docker.
oh yeah?
Yeah.
In your job?
In my job and also my own side stuff too. And but I really wanted to keep VMware running. And Docker for Windows doesn't let you do that because of virtualization stuff. I was getting really frustrated with that. And a coworker told me, said, "Did you check out something called Docker Toolbox? Have you ever heard of it?"
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I installed it and it worked beautifully.
Excellent.
And the only thing I did is that I updated its version of VirtualBox. Basically, Docker Toolbox install like 6 different items, including Docker itself, plus VirtualBox, plus Git, plus some kind of orchestration of it. And one of the videos I saw, I was trying to compare both of them. One of the videos on the website that actually the Toolbox is still a little bit faster than the Docker for Windows.
That's weird.
But Docker for Windows, because they're being paid by Microsoft, they're doing it. They're purposely forcing, so you have to use
Hyper-V.
They just don't want to have the environment to run.
Right.
Check.
Okay.
I'll check around this.
All right, cool. I know that Greg was supposed to be here. So yeah, that's another good point.
I think Yeti.
The Yeti.
Oh, it's a Yeti. I have one of those. Yeti on Windows 10 Pro. Try to put it on one of the machines around 2016. But for it to run, you still have to go to BIOS and enable virtualization, but you don't have to turn the windows. You still need the BIOS one. But at least if you do that, you can have VirtualBox running at the same time as VMware workstation running. That's in and the side. The Debian is a bit smaller, barely, but almost none of the Unix commands work properly in Debian.
Yeah.
And when I tried a very, very basic Windows .NET core, it was like 3 gigabytes.
People, they like to pack Docker images in one place.
I saw that. I didn't try it.
Because it's smaller. Yeah, we talked about that last time.
Well, it's very, very basic, and you have to install extra stuff. So if Debian isn't working like Unix to you, Alpine Unix will fix
I
it.
just use Ubuntu. Well, the last 2 times, Scott, I had to bail out every time. I only could come here for a short time. But this time I actually can stay here.
Excellent. Okay.
You know, your voice is a bit deeper on recordings.
Oh yeah, that's good. Let me get rid of that. That. No. That. There we go.
Right.
Okay, but I still want to be sharing screen share.
Sound off on this? Doesn't disturb everybody?
Share. Okay, there we go. Present to everyone. Okay. Okay. I don't know. Small crowd tonight. I am still holding out hope that we're going to have a few more trickle in here. Was yeah, there was. Yeah.
Should we wait a little bit?
We can wait till 6:10, I guess. Yeah, we can do that.
I don't know, but I don't know if it was really super abnormal. You know,
Yeah,
that
normally.
You know, coming down from 163 where it splits 1 to 805 and so on.
Yeah.
I know, you know, you so kind of you to already spend this time after your regular day.
Yeah.
But if you could maybe do a little bit later, like 6:15, 6:30, because the free parking starts at 6.
Yeah, yeah,
I
that's
don't have a
true.
problem because I live here, so I just walk.
Yeah,
And my friend can come and park at my place because it's parking.
right.
But
Yeah, that's we've been told that before, but I like to do it before 6 because the elevator actually shuts off at 6, and so you have to we'll have to constantly be sending people down and
remember I was late the last time? You just go to the reception person.
Yeah.
And you say, I'm going to the meetup with Fighting Craft, 5th floor. So no problem, go to the elevator and they will let you go.
Okay. All right. All right.
We hooked the Raspberry Pi up to our elevator so you can opt through.
Oh, nice.
It's like use Google Off the URL.
Yeah. I don't know if they would allow that here.
Probably not.
Yeah.
A lot of construction going on for a while. Huh?
Yeah. This is the third meetup that we've had. No, fourth meetup that we've had that's been impacted by that or whatever. It's been going on for like 2 months now, and the lobby is the front entrance of the lobby is supposed to be closed for like till the end of this week, and then next week the front end is that part will be done and that front entrance will be open again. And yeah, but it's been going on for quite a while.
Did you get clients of yours coming here all the time?
Not really. I mean, like I've got one coming in tomorrow is Wednesday. Yep. But like maybe every other week, and we just say, excuse the mess, you know. Don't worry about the construction. All right, it's 6:10. There may be more people. Ben, whenever you get a chance, head downstairs just to check to make sure no one's down there. Maybe talk to the security guy and see if anyone's mentioned it, and tell them they can come on up to the 5th floor if they have. Okay, so this is the third part in a 3-part track, I guess, on Docker and Kubernetes. And in the first talk, we talked about Docker itself and containers, I guess. And then in the second talk, we talked about Docker Compose. And now we're sort of doing the same thing as Docker Compose, but with a little bit more ease of use, and he covers some of the more advanced scenarios in the back with scalable, rollouts and rollbacks, etc. Some of the things that are a little bit more difficult to achieve than just using Docker Compose. One of the first things, actually, on page 7 of the book, he talks about Docker Swarm being the rival orchestrator to Kubernetes. And he says it will probably become less of a focus for Docker Inc. It'll continue to be developed, but Kubernetes really won the fight there. Let's see. Oh, I never knew where they got the logo, and I thought that was pretty cool that it's from helmsman and person who steers the ship, and that's reflected in the logo. I never knew that. On page 10, he talks about how Kubernetes is, in some ways like the cloud, I guess, a cloud OS. The idea that your standard OS is an operating system for a single computer, and your cloud OS is something that is like an operating system for multiple computers. And, all Azure, AWS, Google Cloud, they all talk about how they now have, a cloud OS. And for Google, Kubernetes was a big part of what makes the cloud OS, right? He talked about how it was derived from their Omega. Yeah. Hopefully someone else will knock. Let's maybe that's a good idea, just so they don't have to knock. Or I guess I think there's a way to kind of keep it in unlock mode. That might also be good. Okay, so the first thing he talks about, I guess, is the masters and nodes. The masters being the control plane, comprised of a couple of different pieces, and the nodes being the stuff that does the actual work. Let's see. And he talks a little bit about how you use REST to communicate with the API server. And that's how you inspect Kubernetes cluster, a pod, etc. And he talks about the difference between on page 23, the difference between a VM and a container, which we've talked about a couple of times already. And now the difference between a pod and a container. And he did mention, I don't know, I'm not sure exactly where it was, but he did mention that there is a little bit of a reason for creating a multi-container pod if you have like a logging service, or you have the example he gave was the web server that had a service that basically went out and made sure that the files were in sync with some sort of Git repository or something. It was always pulling the latest source code. So let's see. So a pod does have an IP address, but the IP address changes every time you start a pod. So you can't rely on pod IPs, and therefore there are these things called services, and services will load balance across the pod. I think at the bottom of page 30, he has a figure that talks about how services use labels to determine which pods to run. And he has another picture later on, but I felt like this one was a good one because he had an example of a pod getting disqualified because it was using a different label than the surface. So any questions about the background stuff? I felt that stuff was fairly straightforward. I wanted to mention a couple of weeks ago, let's see, this was it was more than a couple of weeks ago. I guess it was like a month and a half ago. At the .NET users group meeting, Rob Richardson had a presentation on Kubernetes, and his slides are available online, and that was a nice, it's kind of like the same material that's being presented in the book in another different format. I mean, so I felt it was good. Having seen that one and now reading the book, it was nice because they cover it from a slightly different angle. He basically says, don't even bother learning about replica sets because you learn about deployments, and deployments, drive replica sets. And, he basically didn't even cover replica sets at all. Whereas Neil went into quite a bit of detail on that particular topic. Okay, so the next chapter is installing Kubernetes. Anybody have any problems installing Kubernetes? Didn't? Okay, let me show you the easiest way if you have Docker for Windows, right? Or if you have Docker for Mac, right? Either one. So in here, you can go to the settings. Assuming you have a version that is somewhat recent, you click on Kubernetes, you say enable Kubernetes, you're done. He didn't cover that in the book, but that is by far the easiest way if you have Docker for Windows or Docker for Mac. Hey, come on in. Sorry, we just shut the door because of noise.
How many months ago did they start? It's within months, right?
Yeah. It was like a couple of months ago that came out. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a really new feature. There's pizza over there on the
So
counter.
this is my first time. Am I coming in the middle or?
No, you're 15 minutes late, but it's not like.
It said this looks like it was a series of talks.
Oh, yes. Yeah. In that terms, in terms of that, yes, you are. So this is the third meeting of a 3-track series, but this is the first track or first meeting on Kubernetes. So in a way, yes, and in a way, no. We've already covered Docker and Docker Compose, that whole thing, right? So now we're just looking at it from the Kubernetes point of view. Yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, that's by far the easiest way. Trivial. And then it says you can also switch the orchestrator for Docker stack commands. So we were using Docker stack last time to do some orchestration of various containers. And you can actually tell Docker stack to use Kubernetes instead of SORM. Now that feature is even more recent than including it within Docker. But you can tell like Kubernetes kind of won, right, from this, right? The fact that it's now being exposed as a first-class citizen right in the UI of, yeah. But I think what this is using is like the Minikube, right? Which he talks about in the book, and he talks about setting that up, right? So if you went through that, that's similar to what you're going to get when you do this process. And once you do that, you will have kube control. I don't know how you say it actually. That's how I say it, kube control. And you can say version, and that gives you a weirdly unreadable JSON string that basically tells you which major and minor version this is running, both on the client and on the server. I think actually, I felt like there was another one. Is it config API versions? Maybe that's it. Maybe that's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Kind of an interesting tangent. They're now developing that new. Recently, I had an issue where they had changed the library for tarring inside Docker, and I had a really big tar image, and then or a big Docker image, which is expressed as a tar, and the new library that they chose didn't do too well.
No.
So I had to actually regress to a previous version. So
That's interesting. Yeah.
they're going to fix it. But
Yeah. So that was really a Docker thing more than a Kubernetes thing. Yeah. 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 From what I've heard, it's not that uncommon to run into a gotcha, assuming you're doing anything non, sort of traditional happy path, right? They basically test that, but that's about it. Okay, so I'm not going to go over the installation. I will mention the fact that the Google Container Engine, AWS, even Azure, all of them support Kubernetes sort of out of the box. AWS was actually the last to support Kubernetes out of those three, Google obviously being the first.
Is DigitalOcean supported?
Yes, I believe they do. Yeah, I think they do. Yeah. Okay, so that's like we've covered 62 pages and no real anything yet. Yeah, that's the way we operate here under Nigel Poulton's world. Okay, so the next chapter is on pods, and he talks about the pod being possibly more than one container, but really a wrapper around a single container is the way it's most commonly used. But if you do have multiple containers within a pod, you're going to share a host name, an IP address, memory address space, and volumes. So basically, it's kind of like you're in a traditional app, you're running on the same machine as the other app that you're installed with, right? That's kind of the way to look at it. And he talks about the pod lifecycle. When you start one up, it will progress through pending to running to succeeded. If for some reason something happens, it goes into failed. He also talks about something that you'll hear quite a lot when talking about containers in general, the pets versus cattle analogy, right? Don't look at them as like individual cows. Look at them as cattle, right? We don't care about an individual cow. We just want to make sure that our herd of cattle is healthy, right? Let's see. Okay, and so we get our first look at a pod manifest file. And I have one that was on 74, right? Oh, actually, he has it on 72, but he replicated it on 74. And for some reason, I decided to type it in on page 74. So here is what that looks like. I can maybe bring it up in Notepad if that's difficult to read. Can everybody see that? Okay, here, let me do this. Yeah, it's a little bit easier to do it in here. Yes, you can do it in there. Hello, there you are. What's up, man? I told everybody you were coming.
I didn't want to make you a liar.
Yeah. Let's see. All right. So here's our first look at a pod, and it's in YAML, although he did say it could be done in JSON, right? So did anybody try it in JSON? I had a note to try it in JSON, and I never went back and did it. But it has the YAML file has 4 elements up at the top. It has API version, and then kind, and then metadata, and then spec. And the API and kind just tell it how to treat this particular file. metadata we'll see later on is where some interesting stuff happens. Those labels and name and so forth do matter. And then the spec tells you which actual container that we're using to run in this pod. And notice that it's containers, right? We can run more than one, even though typically it's a one-to-one relationship. And that's also the reason for this little dash here indicating, so we could also, if we're running more than one, we could have, right, another one down here. Oops, it has to line up though. Yeah, like that. This would obviously have to have a different name, right? And typically a different image or whatever. But we can run more than one container in a given pod.
I thought that you said that all of them are going to share the same IP and resources. Will they share the same port also?
Yes, this is the port that we want to expose in this pod. Now, typically, we don't communicate with a pod directly, as he'll go into a little bit later. We communicate via service, but yeah, this is the exposed port, right? And he does mention that in, I'll show you where it is now. Hold on. I don't know, somewhere he's talking about the IP address and the port. Page 67, yeah, where he's talking about the container number 1 exposes 80 and the supporting container is exposing 5,000. Yeah, and so both of those are being exposed off of that single shared IP. So from the outside world, I can access 80 or 5,000 in the example on page 67. Yeah. So here I'm exposing this hello container as port 8080. Yeah.
That's the exposed port in the pod, right?
Yeah.
Like multiple containers could be themselves could be running a port 80 inside the pod.
Yes. So hold on, let me think about that. That would depend, right? So in most systems, yes, no, you're right. The container itself can be listening on port 80, and another container within that pod can also be listening on port 80, right? Because the container itself has its own IP and port and so forth, like internally that it's mapping. Yes. So it gets a little bit confusing because there's multiple layers of redirection here, or indirection. Yeah. Yes, you're absolutely right. You can have multiple containers listening or exposing or whatever, port 80. Yeah. But what's interesting is on the pod, I don't know how you would choose which one you're trying to expose there, but it's totally possible from a container point of view to do that. I don't know what the pod would think about it. I don't know how to do that. Yeah. Yeah. We could actually try that.
I'm playing around with Docker Compose. In Docker Compose, they create their own little pods in that type of.
Yeah, let's see if this actually starts. Okay, and so then he talked about you'll use that kube control program to, how do you say it? Anybody have a real, like, this is absolutely, yeah, I've heard that cuddle. Yeah, K-cuddle or kube cuddle or something like that. Yeah, kube cuddle. Anyway, kube cuddle, kube control, whatever it is. Sorry, apply.
What are your nodes? Sorry, environment here.
I'm running like basically Minikube. Yeah. Which you missed, but the absolute easiest way to install Kubernetes is using Docker for Windows or Docker for Mac. Click the checkbox that says Enable Kubernetes. That is way easier than any other thing that I have found on any other.
Cool.
Yeah.
I did not know that.
Yep.
That's on Pragmatic or on preferences or something?
No, neither. It's on settings. Yeah. So you're at Docker for Mac?
Yeah.
Yeah. It
Oh,
should
there
be.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
Enable.
Bam. That
That's
is.
nuts.
Yeah. But that's only been around for like probably 3 or 4 months.
Very cool.
Okay, so let's try and normally we would create, the file np74. Yeah. Oh, I forgot to redo something. Name hello pod already exists. Oh, I probably still have one running is the problem. Sorry. So kube control get pods, I think was the command. Yes, we already have one running, and we can use kube control. What is it? Remove, delete, kill, destroy.
Oh.
Yes, that is exactly what it is. Apply, patch, convert, delete. Okay, so we want to kube control delete hello pod. Okay, let's keep going with the help. Okay, or let's try help delete. There we go. So delete F file name type name or -L label. So let's do delete -L hello pod. Damn. All right. Type name label. Thank you. Okay. So it's delete pod hello pod. Okay. Now that that's deleted, let's go ahead and do our create. Yeah, type. That's what I had to infer. That's what, yeah. Oh, object is being deleted. Damn. Hold on. We have to terminating. There we go. Okay. Now we create. Okay, so it said created, even though we had 2 containers in the same pod, both running on the same container port. So it didn't complain at all, but that I just don't know how that, yeah, how does it determine which one it's actually using underneath the covers? I don't know what the heck. I was kind of expecting it to throw there.
Either load balances it or you have to close that.
Yeah, but I'm saying in terms of you have to expose that port, both of them have this port exposed, and so I don't know how it would either have to load balance it. I was expecting it to throw actually.
Sure you see the file?
Yeah, I'm absolutely sure, but you know what? I can double check because all I have to do, if I can find the thing, is delete it again and then wait for it to go away.
Did the comment to find out what's running?
Yeah, get pods. Yep. Still going. Takes a little bit of time to terminate this thing, huh? Maybe it's getting confused because there's 2 ports. Wait, what am I doing? I'm about ready to do a like -F or something. Kill.
This is ready. 1, 2, 0.
Yeah, status of terminating. We're waiting for it to say no resources found. Yeah, it's weird. It's really slow.
Maybe you did have to, but then there's a bug.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, I'm wondering if I can say, let's see, I had help delete, and I want to, there you go, force delete, boom. That's what I would do. Cube delete, pod, blah, grace period 0 force. I like it. Let's make sure that it didn't like go down in between. Ah, of course. All right. So, let's see. How would I could do this, right? I've saved clearly. And then if I create, now it says 2 and didn't give me an error. So it's absolutely running. Let's see if I go. Oh, look. Crash loop back off. Its state is crash loop back off. Probably what's going on is they're fighting. They're fighting over port 8080. Yeah. So
Were you able to run that actual Docker image, the K8S book?
Yes.
To verify assumptions.
Yeah.
You were
That,
able to
yeah, that ran. Yeah. I had it running when it was
okay.
That's why I wasn't able to start it the first time, is because it was already running.
Verify assumptions. She just had a part 3 and it was one of them to be 8081.
Okay. Oh crap. That's all right. I can do it this way. Okay. 2, 3, 80, 81. Okay, save. Boom. And then boom, 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 boom.
You can do the force thing.
Yeah.
I already did hear it.
Well, so now if we look, crash loop back. One's crash loop back off, and the other is in error. That's interesting. Not. Yeah. So now they're both in crash loop back up. Yeah. So maybe it's something. No, that doesn't make sense. I don't know.
So can we look at logs? Isn't there?
Yeah, there's a
yeah. Pod logs or something.
No, it's not that. It's logs pod and then hello pod 3. Damn it.
Try just kube control in the name logs and then the name of the pod.
Hold on 1 second. I just want to see. No. Hold on. Version proxy. It is logs. Print the logs for a container in a pod. Why didn't that work? Interesting. Okay. Hello. This is pod 3. Container name must be specified. Oh, I see. You have to choose hello CTR. Well, that was very helpful.
So informative.
Yeah. Address in use.
Mm-hmm.
There you go.
Oh, that was for the other one?
Yeah, 2. 2 died.
Mm-hmm.
And because 2 died, that's why it's in this constant state of keep it alive. Yeah. I'm trying to keep this pod alive, but it keeps dying on me. So that's why I'm in this constant error crash loop back or whatever. So now we can use our force die, whatever it was, dash grace period. Whoops. Grace period equals 0 and force. Oops. God, I'm typing like crap. Immediate deletion does not wait for confirmation. The resource may continue to run on the cluster indefinitely. Uh-oh. That didn't sound good. Hello pod not found. Yes, it's 2 deleted and 3 deleted. And now if we do cube control get pods, there we go. Okay, that was a fun little exercise. Okay, so any questions about the pods? That was a good one. That gave us a good 30 minutes of. Okay, so next thing I had after the manifest stuff on page 74 is he's talking about imperative management. He goes into it at some point. I would have rather had it before rather than after, but that's just how I operate. So he's doing kube control create -f like I was doing here, which is what he calls later and other people have called imperative management, which means that this is something you should not do, right? You're in Kubernetes, you're only supposed to use declarative management. This is the way it should look, not I want you to do this. You're not supposed to use create and delete and all that other stuff. You're supposed to say apply. Here's my YAML file, apply it. Make it so. Whatever it says, you do. If that involves create, then create. If it involves delete, then delete, right? That's the way you're supposed to use Kubernetes. Another interesting thing was on page 76, he talks about how the Kubernetes pod contains lots of properties, far more than are defined in the manifest. And those get like default values, and you can query on those using he just uses -o JSON to give the full output. Yeah, basically. And then he says, let's see. So we're back to pod 3. Let me save this one more time, and let me do the create. There we go. Okay. Oh, crap. I'm sorry. I messed it up again. Let me kill it. Okay. And then get rid of my. Okay. And then create. Okay. Now, he says you can do a kube control, kind of like we were doing in Docker, exec, and give it the name of the pod. And now, okay, so that's basically, yeah, that is pretty cool. I agree. I thought that was really neat. So that's basically like, run this command in this container in this pod. Yeah, so that's the output within the container itself. And you can see that, basically it's running node. That's what's actually happening in that pod. Okay, cool. Okay, so any questions on pods? The basic unit of Kubernetes. All right. Next, he talks about replica sets. So, as I mentioned earlier, when I saw Rob Richardson talk about this, he didn't even mention them. Well, he mentioned them only to say, "Don't worry about them." Yeah, don't even think about them. But I see how Nigel is like, he's building up to get to a deployment, right? Rob did pod, then service, then deployment. And, kind of skipped replica sets altogether. Okay, so replica sets, one thing to notice, Actually, if I write it down, kinda. I kinda wrote it down. So there is a Kubernetes walkthrough document, and I was interested in how the deployment. I know you can barely read that. Let me try and. Yeah, there we go. I was interested in how the deployment relates to the pod. So here's a kind of pod, and here is a kind of deployment. And you can see that the this is all pretty much the same stuff. And then the spec for a pod just contains containers. And the spec for a deployment and for a replica set has a bunch of stuff, and then the spec, which is the same as the pod, right? So what Rob said, and Nigel kind of alluded to, is that you won't really have a pod YAML. You won't check that into source control. You'll really only have a deployment YAML, and that'll be the thing that's checked in source control. And that kind of has the piece of the pod that you care about in its spec, right? And on page 86, it's important to note that, yeah, match labels. Here we go. This needs to match this. Let me color those blue. And for replica sets, I have this, I think I have a replica set here, dir. Yeah, there's a replica set. So let me more of that guy. Okay. So again, the selector match label, this needs to match the template metadata label this. Right. Again, that's important. Otherwise, your replica set wouldn't find any nodes to actually replicate. And he talks about why that is a little bit later on, when he talks about how you want to use replica sets to do a rollout of a new version of the app. And so it would not only have the app name, but it would also have the version number, and it wouldn't find the other pods. And he also talked about the reason why, or how you can get like a replica set. You can delete a replica set, create a new replica set, and it will adopt the pods that are already running that have the labels that it cares about, right? Which I thought was kind of cool. All right. A little bit out of date, which is funny because it's you know, it's published in what, like January of this year. Yeah, yeah, it's out of date. Page 88 talks about apps /v1 beta, and that's with Kubernetes 1.8. And now, if you remember, we're in version 10, 1.10, I think. Version, I think it was. Yeah, 1.10. And it's now called apps /v1. There's no more beta. And that's what I used in my, yeah, when I was typing in that replica set. I had just read that somewhere else. So I was like, oh, I should use apps v1 now. So I made a small change to that file using the new namespace. Yeah, so page 89, he's talking about pod custody and how replica sets can adopt pods. Stop me if there are any questions or anything. I don't know. I was just sort of going over what I found was interesting. Page 95, this is where he actually does an adoption. So at the top of the page 95, he deletes the replica set. And then at the bottom of page 95, he creates the replica set again. And all of the same apps or pods, are still running before and after. So if you look at the output in the middle of page 95 and the middle of page 96, those are exactly the same pods. They just were adopted by a different replica set, right? Because he deleted the one that they were running within. And then finally, on page 97, he starts using kube control or kubectl apply, which is what it's the more declarative way of just saying, you know, this is my desired state. I'm not sure what state you're in, but whatever it is, it needs to look like this. So if you need to add things, if you need to delete things, if whatever it is, make it so. This is what that is. And then he mentions on page 98, you should only use the imperative form in the case of an emergency. I would think even in the case of emergency, wouldn't it be better to use the declarative model? I mean, like then you have at least some history of what you're changing, and you know the state. You can go back and look in source control and see, oh yeah, 5 minutes ago I changed it from, that's why it's like this. I changed it from 5 to 10 or whatever, you know.
So on page 93, one thing that struck me was this warning about the labels. There's nothing that, you know, ensures you have unique labels across your assets or whatever. And so that seemed like a good opportunity to mess something up and not realize.
Yeah, I agree.
So I'm not sure what the right model for protecting against that would be.
Yeah, you'd want like a strict mode or something, you know, or you know, some validation. You know, what is it? In Docker Compose from last time, wasn't there something that was like, pretend this is going to happen, and you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
It was like I don't remember what I have in the book. Yeah, it was like show or I can't remember, something like that. Oh yeah, of course, no index. Forgot. Lovely. Thank you, Nigel. But I think it was Docker. Wait, it was Docker Stacks, right? And it was Docker Stacks the one that was replacing, or was Docker Compose the one that was?
Stacks is replacing Compose.
Yeah, Stacks is replacing Compose. Okay, so Stacks, like pretend mode or something. Pretend mode. Docker Stacks. Yeah, like a dry run or a
Oh, dry run.
Is it dry run?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. Nope, dry. I can't find it. Dry run. It would be nice to have a Docker Stack dry run. I thought there was such a thing. Wait, this system offers a dry run view. Whale print. I don't know. It's not quite what I'm looking for. I thought there was a way to basically say, show me what you're going to do. Don't actually do it. Yeah, but I don't see that same thing here in Kubernetes. So maybe they're working on it. Okay. And that's it for replica sets. Questions on replica sets? Nope. All right. In that case, services. So this was very interesting to me. I couldn't figure out where a service is actually running. Do you know what I mean? Like, it's not, is it in its own node? Because if you do this, hold on, do I have a service here? Keep forgetting where I am. Okay, yeah, so in P106 service. Okay, cool. So I think if I say, so I have the service and I think I can just say kube control create from the file replica service. Okay, and then if I say kube control get replica service. Okay, we're up and running. And then if I say kube control create the service itself. Oh, did I put one too many zeros there? I'll do it this way. Yep, sorry. Okay, and then do that. Okay, service is created, and if I say kube control get, is it SVC? Yeah. Yeah, so where does this run, this service?
Can you do like
Info or describe? Name, labels, selector, load balance, endpoints, session affinity.
Well, there's is that IP? No.
Yeah, so I don't think it lives in the.
Oh wait, IP. What's the IP? Does that tell you? So there is an IP, right? 10. Does it tell you which node it's on?
Well, it's not on, right? like if I do cube control get pods, there are many pods that are running.
Do get
And if-
nodes.
Get nodes.
And then dash O.
Dash
wide
O
is-
or
is
wait.
Wide. Dash. I mean, just see. I don't know if it shows. Does it give you IP there? Yeah. No.
No. But if I do
JSON
nodes JSON, yeah, dash O JSON instead of wide. This is going to output a crap ton of stuff. Hold on.
Type it
To out.json.
JSON. You have
machine. Container machine.
Yeah, no, you can't even read that, can you? Okay, so find IP. There's only one. That's weird.
IP for what node?
It only output one node? Is that what happened? Metadata, spec, status, images. Yeah, I don't know how to.
Here's the one that could-
Yeah, that was the one. Okay, just address. Let me just try address.
It's 65.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't see. Yeah, what we need are like there's only one node here. So we don't really have and it's a master node. And I'm guessing that's where the services are running, like
yeah.
some sort of like, but I don't see them running anywhere. I don't know.
Right.
And he never talked about that. And I was just, because the obvious thing when you're thinking, when you're looking at some of these pictures, like page 104, 105, 103, is like, well, what happens if the service goes down? Theoretically, those would be run in redundancy as well, right? It's because you got like a set of nodes and then a service and then another set of nodes. So you've got front end nodes and back end nodes, and they're talking to one another through this service. What happens if that service goes down? Then they would be unable to talk, and therefore your app would be down. Your front end wouldn't be able to talk to your back end, right? Until that service came back up. And we've seen that stuff sometimes takes like 15 seconds to get it running again. So theoretically, you'd want two of them so that, even if one of those services went down, the other one's still running and you're still able to talk to one another. I don't know. But I couldn't find out where it was running. If someone wants to do a quick Google search on that, that would be cool.
On the Docker is Docker-machine. That's actually lists you the IP, but I don't know how it's.
Yeah. Docker machine is, yeah, that's the sort of the VM that's running the Docker containers, right? That's its IP, right?
No, it actually, if you're running multiple Docker instances, you would actually find every single IP of one of those things.
Right. Each container has an IP, and then
will tell you what they are.
Docker machine will tell you what they are. I see.
Docker.
Yeah.
Because I purposely created some Node.js web app. And I couldn't, I specified a port to be available. I couldn't find on the browser. Localhost would not work, and nothing would work. When I execute Docker machine IP, I would find the IP I was supposed to browse to using port 88.
Yeah.
So I was wondering maybe.
But that's
equivalent.
well, I think it would be the equivalent of. It is called a service, right? Am I losing my mind? In like in Docker Compose or in Docker Stacks, right? You still have the concept of a service, which allows two sets of containers to talk to one another. You talk from one container to another through a service. So there is a concept of a service in Docker Compose or Docker Stacks, but I don't know where those live either, quite frankly. Yeah. Anyway, I was just curious if it ran more than one. I assume they're on the, because he talks about on page 109, an external client contacts one of the nodes of the service, one of the nodes of the cluster. I guess that's the right word. But that one doesn't happen to be running the pod that it's trying to talk to. So it will contact the service on behalf of the external client to get the right node to go to and redirect the external client to that node. So it seems to imply that the service is running outside of the nodes, but I couldn't find where, you know, I don't know. Yeah, the service object has a reliable port mapped to every node in the cluster. And the port that the service uses is the same on every node. Yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
I'm reading here's a snippet that I'm reading. In reality, Kubernetes applies IP addresses at the pod scope. Containers within a pod share their network namespaces, including their IP address.
Right.
This means that containers within a pod can all reach each other's local ports on local host.
That makes sense. We've covered that, yeah. But service, that's okay. Yeah, so service is the thing. I don't know where it runs. I don't know where. You know what? Actually, hold on. There are like third-party tools, I think, for that. Let's see, services. Let's see. A Kubernetes service is an abstraction. Yeah, see, I don't think they exist really. I think they only exist in like the control plane or something. You know what I mean? They don't. Service IP is the client. This is a node. And then the node is trying to reach a backend pod. And it's going through kube proxy to get there. API server can talk to kube proxy. Yeah, so I think it's an abstraction. I don't think it actually gets deployed anywhere. Virtual server. Real server. Interesting. Okay. Well, so it apparently is not a real node that runs. It is a service. It is an abstraction, I mean. So another interesting thing, page 112, kube control expose is the imperative way to create a new service. But again, typically you'll just use the declarative way and say kube control apply and the service like we just did. Okay. Which brings us to 118 and the real world example that he calls it, which I thought was pretty cool, actually. So here is, he's basically deploying a new version of the app, and he's doing this all manually. And then when he goes on to cover deployments, he talks about that will do exactly the same stuff that we just did, but automatically for you, right? So page 119, he is running a new version, a new replica set that has a new version label. And what he does to take the old, so basically this would be like a canary situation, right? So you have a replica set of 10 nodes, and you want to throw one node that's the new version. And you will affect, let's say there are 9 nodes running in the replica set, and we throw in the new node. So you'd affect 10% of the customers by round robin, you know, would land on this new node. After you leave it running for like 5 minutes, you discover that no one has crashed, even though 10% of the customers have been redirected over to that one node. So at that point, you can spin up 9 more of those and then take the service and flip the version to basically say, take those other guys out of commission, right? That's basically how he, you know, says that you can deploy a new service. You can also do blue-green testing or any of these other more complicated deployment scenarios with the simple concept of replica sets and those service labels, which is pretty cool. Yeah. And then deployments are the way that you do that in sort of automatically. You create a deployment file which has, there's one on page 128 if you're sort of following along. So it has a template, it has underneath spec, sorry. It has replicas, it has selector, then it has min ready seconds, a strategy, as well as the template, which we've already covered. So the min ready seconds and the strategy defined how, when you're doing updates and things like that, how it will work. And then once again, you would just say kube control apply deployment given this file, and it would spin them up for you automatically. And when you want to do a new update of the app, you would just change the image. Let's see, where does he do that? Accessing the app, rolling update. This line changed. 133, right? He just changed in the spec, the image line. He changed from the version called latest to the version called edge. And then he applied the deployment, and that, you know, went through and, you know, made sure that all of his things were up and running.
Earlier, where we were at 10% and then we had 90. It does the magic.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's basically whatever you specify in the min ready seconds and the strategy, that's how it will do the magic of upgrading app 1 to app 2, right? Yeah, it's pretty cool. I will agree that that's a pretty neat thing about Kubernetes is you have this YAML file, you make a slight tweak to the YAML file, and you say, make it so. And it just goes out and does everything that it needs to do in order to make that happen. So I thought we'd give that one shot, and then that's pretty much the end of the book. And I think I have a deployment. Why not? Well, this is a deployment. Let me just fix this to be what he had. Okay. Copy. So this was page 128. I'll use Notepad NP 128. This is deployment.
I guess in the same algorithm, you could say roll back those all that kind of stuff.
Yes, he does do that. So he said, here's how you perform a rolling update through 133. And then he said, note that if you do a kube control get replica sets after doing the update, that you have one replica set, which is all 10 nodes, and you have another which is just hanging out and it's got 0 in it. And that was the old replica set. And then when you do a rollback, it basically, those nodes flip, and the new one has 0 and the old one has 10, right? Yeah.
Could that be built into the failure? I mean, does the detect a failure?
Yeah, so you could write a script that would basically apply the roll forward, then issue a request, compare the snapshot with what you're expecting to get or whatever it is,
So that's external to the
algorithm. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it is.
It's still cool.
Yeah.
Feedback.
So let's see if we can get this. So this is deployment. He has hello deploy. And then he has no labels. And he has a spec, and it says replicas. I'm going to use 5 instead of 10. And then he has selector, map, labels, and this is hello world. Yeah, min ready seconds. Thank you. It's not under the selector though. It's just min ready seconds, and this is 10. And then he has a strategy, which is type is rolling update, and then in that, so he has to, sorry. Max unavailable is 1, and the max surge is 1, and then he has a template, metadata, labels, app, and this is hello world, and then the spec containers name, this is hello prod, and this is Nigel Poulton. Nigel Poulton, Kubernetes book, latest. Well, latest first. So we'll do it both ways. 80. Okay, we'll save. That looks right to me. Everybody concur. This is extreme programming. So we'll go ahead and say kube control oopsie, apply -f, and then that file, deployment. Okay. Yeah, now we monitor by saying git deploy, Yeah. Oh, and notice that it went, desired is 5 and current is 6. It actually went one higher. It should come back down, I believe. Yeah. It's not coming down quickly, though, is it? We may have to wait that, whatever it was, 10 seconds or something. Yeah, there it goes. Yeah. Cool. And then if we do, we look at the RS, replica sets. Okay, so the RS was the one that we had done before. So ignoring that one. The deploy with the hashtag, that is it creates a replica set based on the hashtag of the deployment file. So when that deployment file changes, that's what we'll see when we update this thing to be Edge. It'll get a new, okay, so now we say Edge and we save. And we go apply that same file. And then we can monitor again. Let me go down here. Yep. And then we also want to get that. Yep. Yeah, it's getting 2. Actually, this is kind of more interesting than the other one. Yeah. Still. Wait, does it say 2? No, it says 5. I wonder if it's because we said yeah. Said max surge of 1. Max unavailable is 1. So it took down the 1. Sorry, just checking. That doesn't seem to be going very quickly. Oh, you know what I also should have done? Dang it. Is that dash record. Where is that mentioned? He says if you do the dash record, which I can't find the thing right now. Update. There it is. This update will take some time to complete. It will iterate one pod at a time, pull down the new image on each node, wait 10 seconds after each pod. Oh, rollout status. That's what we wanted to say. But I think I may have had to say record in order to do that. So get roll. No, it's just rollout status. It's not get. So rollout status. Man, I'm typing like crap. Deployment, and then hello deploy. No, that doesn't tell us anything. Damn it. Because I didn't do the dash record. Okay, let's see what we're doing. No? Oh, wait, no. Replica sets is what we want. No, we missed the intermediate. Okay, and now if we want to do a roll back, we would say so we say rollout history. Damn it. Rollout history on deployment hello deploy. Revision 1, change none. Okay. Shouldn't it say apply file name? I guess it's because we didn't say -- record. Yeah, I would thought it would have said that.
Yeah.
As that.
Let me try it again with record.
Well, what I do want to do is I want to undo. So let's see if we can do that. Yeah, so he says that was rollout history. And so you can undo one of those. Deployment, hello, deploy, -- revision equals 1. So we're on 2. We're going to go back to 1. And now what? Did I do it right? Hello, deploy, undo. Yeah. Okay. And then we do get deploy, hello, deploy. Hello, deploy. And where's the status? There we go. There we go. You just have to look at it while it's going on. That's where the rollout status is helpful. Okay. And so now if we look at the history, do we get something else? Interesting. So 1 is gone and 3 has been added. Interesting. Yeah, I think I need to say -- record, and that would have given us a little bit more information there. But still, we've successfully rolled up and rolled back an app. Cool. Any questions? That was Kubernetes.
I wonder if we have a video of it, so when we need it.
I think the next strategy is to look at what happens if you have to update the version. What strategies you have to implement.
That's interesting because you'd think that like AWS and Google and Azure, whatever, they would be handling the management of that for you. Are you not using a public cloud? Is that what it is? Are you handling?
No.
Okay.
I've talked with other people and I talked about some of the things that they didn't think about.
Putting it to a single Docker container.
I think all of the major cloud vendors will handle updating the Kubernetes service for you. Like they support a certain version, and as new versions of Kubernetes come out, then those new versions are rolled out. But and so it's only when you're applying commands, right, that the new version would get used, whereas you may have been using the old version before, right, applying deployments or changes to your configuration or whatever. Yeah, so that's a good question in terms of like how they do it, but I imagine they do something like same thing that we were just talking about, like a canary sort of scenario where a couple of new beta testers or people that have signed up get the new one, and then they use it and make sure that it doesn't crash or whatever, and then it just gradually gets rolled out across all of the nodes for all of the various machines that are actually running this stuff, which are of course virtual machines. Yeah, Rob talked about that actually when he spoke. It's funny. It was a funny little moment. Let me see if I can bring up his slides. Okay, he talks about orchestration engines, Kubernetes, Docker, blah, blah, blah. We've talked about all of this stuff inside the container, the ecosystem. He talks about Kubernetes replacing almost everything other than the Docker file and the image in Docker Hub. Okay, so master nodes and worker nodes, same sort of stuff that he goes into in the beginning. Same diagram that Nigel has kind of in his book. Okay, installing Kubernetes. Step 1, don't. That was his advice on installing Kubernetes, because there are, you know, you can get it in the public cloud, and you can also get it in Minikube or Docker for Mac or Windows. Right. So there's really no reason that you would have to set it up yourself unless you're trying to put together your own data center, which no one does nowadays. You know.
Are you likely to do this whole series again?
I'm sorry?
Are you likely to do this whole series again, part 1, part 2?
No. So what's going to happen now is that was sort of the end of the Docker Kubernetes, and now we get to vote on what we are going to cover next. So as an attendee, yes, Spark is definitely the forerunner of the things that we get to vote on. But we did say that's just the front runner. We'll get to vote, you know, tonight.
Do you mind, Scott, telling a little bit about what you Spark?
I can tell you a little bit about what I know. So everybody's heard of Hadoop, hopefully.
That was the Spark you were talking about?
Yeah, it is. So Hadoop was largely disk driven, and, you know, could be SAN or whatever. You know, it was stored, persisted, and it had some pretty bad performance problems. You know, if you were going to do a query, you know, over a bunch of different, or a MapReduce job over a bunch of different nodes, it would take, you know, hours to complete or whatever. And so Spark does some pretty snazzy algorithms and tries to use as much memory as it can, tries to hold as much things into memory so that it doesn't have to keep writing back and forth to disk, doesn't have to keep persisting. And because of that, they tout that they are 100 times faster than Hadoop. So it's really just Hadoop, but held in memory, right? Is kind of what it is. So
Data document.
it's the actual storage format isn't necessarily specified. So you know, big data, right? And there's the 4 V's. What is it? How many V's are there? Volume, velocity. Hold on one second. I have the tools to answer this question. Let me see if I can find it. Intellect, Azure for Gov, HD Insight, Scott's version. Crap. Let's see if I can. I don't really want to do that right now. Can I get around it? No. Yeah, I can. Okay. Let's see. Yeah, there you are. 3 V's: volume, variety, and velocities. I couldn't remember how many V's there were. So the big data problem, right? If you've got too much volume, you can't hold it on a single computer. You've got too much variety. You've got structured data, unstructured data, image data, log file data, you know, all kinds of stuff coming at you. It's hard to process all of these things. And velocity, high speed. you can't do it. You can't process the inbound information on just one machine. Then you have a big data problem. And so Hadoop was there to basically for processing big data problems. And the way it did it is with commodity machines, and it would break the problem up across these different machines. And it would take, you had a HDFS, the second bullet there, stood for the Hadoop file system, and it would take the huge data set that you had that couldn't be held on a single machine, and it would break it up amongst the HD file system, and it would send the algorithm to the data rather than bringing the data to the algorithm, right? So that's how it worked, and that process was called MapReduce, right? Okay, and there's a bunch of different components in the ecosystem for querying it and for breaking it up and for scheduling the jobs and for reporting on it and, you know, lots of different stuff. This talks about what I just said about the high HDFS, the Hadoop distributed file system, about how it's broken and distributed, and about how MapReduce work. And so Spark, yeah. And so Spark basically is in-memory execution environment for that same thing. It can use HDFS underneath the covers. It was written in Scala, so that's its primary API, but it then later gave a Java compatibility layer, and then it enabled you to do it using Python, and then it enabled you to do it using R. It creates a directed acyclic graph of the work and how it needs to be distributed. The main data set is called a resilient distributed data set. And then it tries to map out where it can maximize the use of memory. And that's what gives it its speed. And the same ecosystem, sorry, that was me up at the top. The same ecosystem that you had in Hadoop, you still have in Spark, right? So you can use all the same, you know, third-party stuff. It plugs in well. So that PySpark there, that's what I was talking about, is the Python translation layer. There's also an RSpark now. Yeah, that's about, yeah. So basically it's a way of doing big data problems. So that was one of the things that we were thinking of talking about next time. Let me go back to my next topics. So when we voted last time, it was at the end of the, yeah, R track. And basically we had a tie between Docker, Kubernetes, and Apache Spark / Databricks. Databricks, I think, is the commercialization of the open source project. Let me see if I can look for that. I don't know as much about that one. Ike was talking about that last time. Oh yeah, that's the Azure one, but there's Databricks.com there. Unified analytics platform from the original creators of Apache Spark. Yeah, that's a bunch of marketing speak, so I can't really tell what it is. Sorry, you'd have to get Ike. He knows more about that part of it.
Are all the presentations online?
Yes, all of the presentations from you know, way back when we were doing C#, T-SQL, any framework, mobile, JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Angular. I think we did JavaScript twice, actually. Python, DevOps, Linux, design, R, Docker Kubernetes. And now, so one thing that we can do is Apache Spark Databricks. Last time we were tossing out some other things that people wanted to cover. I can make this bigger again. Sorry. So someone was mentioning that they actually wanted to do Scala prior to doing Spark, because that is the language that it is developed in, and it is also the primary language that the API is written in, although there are compatibility layers to, as I said, Python and R.
Go and Rust becoming even popular.
Yeah, that's true. Go and Rust are becoming very popular. So we could do one of those.
So the advantage of them is
Yeah, they are machine compile. What are those called? Compile to machine code. So we could do Go or Rust. Somebody had said Python for data analytics. We have done Python and we have done data analytics. Somebody else wanted to do cross-platform mobile in JavaScript. Somebody else wanted to do Meteor and Mongo. So that's the WebSocket web apps. So where you have multiple clients that are communicating directly with each other.
It used to be hot at one point, but then when the huge burden that the socket layer in Meteor was using made it hard to expand. But that's why I think that it didn't go very far.
I don't know. I don't know if I've heard that one. I know it's really only useful in kind of it's not like every web app would need Meteor. It's really like a collaborative app where, you know, peer-to-peer type application through the web. That's where you would use Meteor and the WebSocket approach, right? You guys use WebSockets at okay.
But not Meteor.
Yeah, but not Meteor. You just use WebSocket.io.
Socket.io, yeah.
Yeah, Socket.io. That's what I meant to say. Yeah. Okay. But what's the sort of communication that's happening across that? Like, it's not a peer-to-peer. It's more like
it's
server calling back.
Notification, push notifications to a client.
Yeah.
From the server.
Right. Yeah. So that doesn't need to be like a Meteor type thing. Yeah. Anyway, that was just a suggestion that somebody threw out. I think this one was what became that one, right? So I think.
Has there been a NoSQL track?
Has there been a NoSQL track? I don't know. Actually, this is not all of them. This is just the ones that I was kind of, I at least had one module in, right? So I'm not certain if there has been. I don't remember one though. Yeah, just NoSQL. Yeah. So maybe not with Meteor, but just NoSQL in general. Yeah. SQLite. Sorry? Yeah, yeah. And NoSQL would Mongo would be part of it, but it would probably also cover, you know, like I assume it would cover a document database, a key value database, a columnar database, and a graph database. Is it? I assume that what you meant when you said NoSQL. Yeah. So we could pick Mongo for the document. We could pick Cassandra for the columnar. We could pick, Neo4j for the graph, and we could pick from here, whatever. Yeah, a lot of the database engines these days, MySQL or Postgres or even SQL Server from Microsoft have like you can create columns that have like documents in them, or you can key value index a table, or you can create a columnar table, or you can graph, maybe not so well. There's plugins and stuff that you can get kind of similar to graph databases. But yeah, you can, if you have the bulk of your data in a relational database and you want to try and keep the bulk of your data in a relational database, but still get some of the programming benefits of like a NoSQL, oftentimes these days you can have plugins or add-ons or whatever to your database so that you can kind of marry the two models. Yeah, that's totally true. Yeah, so
Are we going more language? Are we going database?
I don't care. I'm totally up for anything. So let's see. Send you Python. What is this for? I don't know what all this is for.
For the functional programming track, would you say it's better to pick one language and just that's it, or like a Scala, Haskell, Clojure, like touching a few and seeing how they differ?
We did in ArchSig. We did that. What was it called? 7 languages in 7 weeks or whatever. I think that's what it's called. And we did do a couple of different languages, and it was pretty cool to give you kind of a exposure from a number of different angles. I don't know. That one would be, I would think you could take a language and you could talk about the functional aspects. Like you talk about tail recursion and mutability and
functional composition.
Yeah, functional composition and stuff like that on any of the language you pick. There may be slight differences, and there may be some things that one language supports and other languages do not, right? Just like in an object-oriented world, you would have that, right? So I would think, since we're trying to basically introduce functional programming, let's pick one language, but then when an individual topic comes up, we can talk about, oh, and this other language does it a little differently than Scala, for example. Yeah. So thoughts. If there's not enough consensus here, we can post it online too. Is another thing we can do.
The one concern with Spark is that basically only going to interest people that have to deal with the wires.
Yeah, that's true. It's a solution for big data problems. There are more and more big data problems these days. There's a lot of people have big data problems that 5 years ago didn't have big data problems, but it's true. It's only useful in that. Yeah, narrow depends on how you view the world, but yeah.
That's what I remember somebody trying to describe big data. It's either a lot of data or very complicated data.
That's 2 of the 3 V's. Or it's fast data. It's data coming at you so fast that you can't keep up with it. That's the other V.
What about doing something completely wacko, kind of like robotics? Microcontrollers or...
Yeah, well, there is, so we are loosely affiliated with the .NET user group, right? We're not really .NET anyway anymore. Well, when we started, we were teaching, C#. Like you can look at these first couple of topics, right? It was C# was the very first one. Yeah, that was head first C#.
Yeah, I remember the .NET meeting, and they were speaking about this group there.
Yeah, exactly.
I was saying that, I learned Python here.
Yeah.
And many of the C#7 new features are basically clone of Python.
Yeah.
I found C# I found a lot of similarities.
Yeah. Yeah. There's been a lot of interplay, actually, also with JavaScript too.
Right.
There's been a lot of interplay and like, let me steal that idea, or like.
Just merge.
I don't know. I kind of like the diversity.
I know there's lots of fuss now, a buzz about microservices.
Yeah, we had talked about that one before, but it's a tough one to talk about unless you have a particular, that one, like big data is one where we'd have to come up with some sort of project, some sort of giant project that we could break into little microservices. It'd be a tough one to cover. Anyway, we were sort of loosely associated with the .NET user group. And there is another group which is loosely associated with the .NET user group called the Hardware Hackers. And so we try not to step on them as much as we can. They do the Arduinos, the NetDuinos, the Raspberry Pis, the microcontrollers, the robotics, the stuff like that. And they have new, they have a once a month meeting,
Also the group of the OWASP, the security.
Yep, I am aware.
They have small subjects on it, but maybe we can find some anti-hacking or fully hacking books.
Now that one I would like to do. I'm totally down with that one. So there's a series of books called Hacking Exposed, Hacking Security. Yeah, exactly. I'd be down with that one. That's a good topic. Oh, wait, let me get rid of this.
To the top?
Oh, sure, yeah.
Towards the top.
Yeah, I would. I'd like to read the Hacking Exposed books. I've always wanted to, and I've never just gotten around to it. But I would want to check one out anyway. At least see if it's worth,
I should be excited about it. And, the viewers here.
Yeah.
That may actually bring a lot of more people because it is really a trendy subject. Which means that the more people that show up here, the more we can have better input to the next track.
Yep. Yeah, that's true. So I'll put it. In terms of our votes here, what do we have? If everybody let's just do 2 votes each. That way, since there's only 4 of us or 5 of us, if you count me. And let me make this one.
What was the last one? Advanced database analysis.
Database. Yeah, analysis services is a cube. Database cubes like roll-ups and drill downs and stuff like that. You know what I'm talking about? Somewhere between a database and a warehouse.
It's a MicroStrategy product. And specific to a particular database language. But database architecture.
So layer on top, it's a business intelligence layer.
Yeah, on top of a database. It doesn't matter necessarily which database, and I don't know whoever proposed this topic, which database they had in mind, but I probably just wrote it down however they said it. So,
That was aging out.
well, there's that's right. Sorry. That's not right. This must be 12. Okay. So in terms of our votes here, you get 2 votes each. Let me just quickly. This is a tough one. Too many topics.
We can each vote for 3 or 2. Which one we want to keep first, and then
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. All right. 3 each. I actually have 4, so I'm still not, but yeah.
Yeah.
3. Let's do 3. Okay. How many people for Apache Spark Databricks? Okay. 1, 2. That was one of me. I forgot to raise my hand, but yeah. Scala functional programming. I have 1 as well, so that's 2. Hacking security. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right. Yeah. Yeah. Golang, Rust, 1. Python for data analytics, 1. Cross-platform mobile. No.
How many did we get? 3 each?
3 each. Meteor. Anybody got any left? NoSQL, 1. SQLite. Analysis services, 2. Interesting. Hmm.
I hear about API, all the
Yeah.
We did one on socket.io. I don't want to introduce a new topic this late.
So we could do we'd have to de-emphasize the Mongo. Would you change 1?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, you can take my Python for data analytics, but it's that one there.
Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. So basically, it still looks like hacking security would be probably the most popular topic, followed by Apache Spark. I want to see that one just because, I know a couple of clients that use it and pretty popular. And anyway, we'll put it up into a vote. So I'll tell you what, I'll just take. Well, it depends on the track. So I don't imagine that Apache.
You mentioned that the Apache Spark would make sense because of the Docker.
One of the primary ways that you run Apache Spark is through Docker containers. There's like a open source Docker container that they give you, then you can that way you can run multiple nodes on your own machine. Because it's a big data problem, right? So what it's saying is there's too much data for a single machine to handle, so we're going to divide it up into multiple machines. But you only have 1, so you have this Docker container, and you run a cluster of nodes that are each containers on your own box, and each one is handling the data. And there's drivers for Spark, which can map it to your local. You can treat your local file system as a HDFS, or it can treat, like S3 as a.
So the problem is with so few, the interest in Docker obviously collapsed this last point. So.
I mean, we only had at the beginning, we had about 15 or so. Greg, you remember? We had about 15 in the beginning, and it tapers off, every time. It's always the end of a track that you get like just the fewest number of people. So 15, 10, 5, it was a normal progression. Yeah, there was definitely more interest in R than there was in Docker. It's absolutely true. All right. So I'll post these top 3 or 4. Yeah, I'll post those up on the meetup, and we'll see what we get. Cool.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for
See ya.
taking the time.
Yeah, thanks.
How many of the installs did you try
From
from the front of the book?
I didn't, because I knew about that one. That's the
Yeah.
thing.